Remember to visit Dan's Dinosaurs for all your Nanmu dinosaur needs. Dan consistently offers great discounts on pre-orders, and as always, if you choose to shop from him, be sure to mention that your friend Killer Shrew Fan sent you in the comments section at checkout. Now with that out of the way, let's get on to the review. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nanmu November, and this is gonna be a fun one. Today we're tackling Nanmu's Triceratops offerings, nicknamed Heavy Lance. Released earlier this year, Nanmu produced 3 different versions of the standard Triceratops, while also delivering a personal dream figure while they were at it. The sick Triceratops from the original Jurassic Park. When I first saw that, I think I screamed a little. I had wanted a decent model inspired by that scene for the longest time, and Nanmu was finally making it happen. I probably could have gotten a version of that scene in model form sooner if I had sold everything else in my collection. Anyway, I ended up springing for the sick version as well as one of the standard Triceratopses, and they ended up arriving in the late spring, early summer of this year. I can't remember, but I couldn't be more excited to talk about them. So without further ado, let's do this. We're going to start off with the standard version, and we're going to go just a little bit out of order here because, as you may have noticed, I didn't spring for the film color scheme like I say I usually do, and there are a couple of good reasons for that. For one thing, since Nanmu was releasing the Sick Edition that came with the original colors, I felt like I didn't need to shell out $65 for a standing version with the exact same color scheme. Nanmu probably anticipated this thought, and so worked to deliver a couple of other tantalizing options, one of which I thought was kinda silly, and one of which I actually really liked. This is the tricolor variant, and along with being different enough from the Sick version to make it its own unique figure, I also felt it almost looked like a riff on the original concept art from the Triceratops from the '93 film. Or at the very least, a more visually exciting play on the design from the World films. That was exciting to me, so I landed on that one, and boy does it not disappoint. This is a very colorful figure with some wonderful paint applications. You can see that the dorsal region is a sort of blue-gray with darker stripes and a very subtle golden highlight transitioning into a sort of peach tone midsection and underbelly. You also have some white dry brushing along the flanks and banding the tail to give it some breakup, and the head is gorgeously painted with some golden colors working to give the frill extra visual interest. The horns and beak also have a nice golden tone that transitions to that blue-gray color the closer you get to the base. The application itself is also so thin and subtle that the plastic maintains a semi-translucent appearance, giving the piece a living, flesh-like look. So yeah, I do really like how the color scheme turned out on this one, and the fact that it's familiar but still its own thing makes it extra cool in my eyes, and definitely a departure worth springing for. As far as the sculpt work goes, it's also very well done, capturing the likeness of the film counterpart to a T. You can see that the head has all those lovely wrinkles and skin folds down around the slightly open beak, which boasts of a subtle texture very reminiscent of the cracked surface of the animatronics design. As you move up the head, you can see the eye picked out in a vibrant orange color and seated in lovely bags as we make our way up to the frill, which is just chocked full of scales of varying shapes and sizes. The occipitals, brow, and nasal horns have all been adorned with various striations, imperfections, and grooves that give them a nice, worn look, and each is situated in some lovely folds of skin. Here you can get a look at that beautiful frill from a head-on view and get a better look at all of those recognizable ornamental scales. So yes, another screen-accurate, highly detailed showing on Nanmu's part with this head. If we move down the body, you can see how the neck, specifically in the throat region, has all these lovely areas of bunching up skin and wrinkles forming from the slight turn of the head, and this has then been covered in smaller scale work. At the midsection, you have got all of those distinct feature scales running up the arms and thighs, as well as across the swell of the gut and across the back. There are some very lovely areas in the skin work, particularly where it hangs down around the stomach there and moves away from the limbs as they pull slightly away from the midsection. That sagging fold on the right flank and how it runs up and over the thigh really gives this piece a sense of weight, while on the opposite side, you can see how the skin stretches a little tighter over the flank with the slight curve of the animal, which in turn helps to sell the movement. Amidst all of that, you have got more striations and lovely scale work sprinkled throughout. There's some more well done skin work pulling at the base of the very fat, stubby tail, and you can see more striations eking up through the underside as you move down to the rounded tip. The pillar-like legs of the figure are very elephantine in nature, with those black and copper hoof-like nails and lovely bunches of skin around the ankles, kneecaps, and elbows. You've also got some very nice muscle tones in the calves as the animal braces mid-stride. Moving along the underside, you can get a good look at just how rotund this figure is, as well as seeing where all of that hanging skin gathers down above the gut. This entire area has also been adorned with very fine scale work, but once you hit the tail, you can see how that gives way to the wrinkles and striations. Here's a look at the back of the figure so that you can get a sense of the rows of ornamental scales and how they interact with the rest of the soft tissue. And you can see that even the back of the frill has been addressed with all these tiny non-overlapping scales. Nanmu really didn't leave anything unattended to on this model. This figure is posed mid-stride with the left arm lifted and back right leg bracing as the left leg and right arm are planted firmly beneath it. The head, along with the rest of the body, follows a gentle curve over the right shoulder all the way down to the tail, giving this piece an active yet tranquil ambling posture. So yes, the sculpt on this, just as lovely as the paint itself. It absolutely screams Jurassic Park trike in its presentation, and I don't think I could be happier with it. But of course, I could be happier with it because we still have to talk about the sick Triceratops, and this is basically everything the standard version is, ramped up to 11. Looking at the two side by side, it's quite obvious that it's the exact same sculpt that's been repositioned. Even the left leg of the standing one is curled up like the leg of the sick version. But whereas the sculpt work on the standard version is more than well done, the sick version is actually cast in resin, making the details much more crisp across the board. Holding the figures side by side, you can see how it's all the same detail work with the wrinkles and striations of the face, the cracked surface of the horns and beak, the folds of skin in the throat and areas of sagging flesh hanging around the swell of the gut, the tension lines forming from the pull of the limbs, the short, stubby tail, all of it is exactly the same. But since it's resin, the details are captured much more clearly from the mold, and as a result, the paint apps highlight it a bit better. Overall, I think it's the superior model, but for just over $25 more, I guess you would expect that. Anyway, I adore just how well Nanmu captured the likeness of the sick Triceratops from the film. The curled up foot, the swelling stomach under the labored breathing, the surface texture of the horns and beak, all of it looks like it was molded from an official maquette. I also appreciate just how thorough they were with the sculpt. It'd be easy to just forget the part we're not going to see, but you can see that Nanmu made sure the underside, though flattened to allow the figure to lay flush, is still covered in all of those great details, including some nice belly rolls that form as the animal is pushed into the earth beneath its own weight. The color scheme is also very well done, extremely reminiscent of the film version. With a mix of browns and creams, it's not a very interesting paint job, but it's applied so well with a pleasing amount of dry brushing that really brings all of that detail work to life. So yeah, sorry if it feels like I'm not going too in depth with this one. I just have so very little to say about it. It 100% speaks for itself. This is the Jurassic Park trike. I know both Iron Studios and Chronicle Collectibles have done their own licensed and larger versions of this scene, but I actually think this one is superior to the Chronicle offering, and if you don't want to break the bank for the Iron Studio statue, then this is the substitute you have been waiting for. If you didn't tell me this wasn't a licensed product, then I wouldn't know the difference. It's that close to the real deal. Both of these figures did come with some extras for display purposes. The Sick Trike obviously has this very nice display base. You can see it's an earthy texture with all sorts of lovely ferns that have been depressed beneath the weight of the trike. It's then been painted with various shades of browns and greens, with the foliage getting a darker forest wash to help bring them to life. The underside then has a jet black plastic finish with the Nanmu logos and Heavy Lance title. When it comes to installing the figure on the base, there really isn't anything to indicate how or where exactly it's supposed to lay. I found putting it with its foot directly between the foremost patches of vegetation results in a sort of snug fit, and man oh man does this thing look great on that base, really ties the whole look together. The standard version came with its own base and a replacement horn. Now these were only available to those who pre-ordered the figure, and now I understand that it just comes with the usual horns fixed in place and no base, although some sites do still carry the option for the extra horn and display base. For the tricolor version, you got this extremely translucent blue-toned base with all of these surface ripples and whatnot. I know it's kind of hard to see on my review space, but I guess it's meant to emulate water. To Nanmu's credit, it looks the part. The way the light refracts and dances off the surface really sells it, but when you add the figure to the base, it just doesn't do much for it overall, unfortunately. Plus, since its feet don't really break the surface, it just looks like it's walking on water like some sort of Jesus dinosaur. So yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So if you missed out on this base, not a huge deal. But the cool addition is that broken horn. I mean, I love this thing. The edges are all uneven as if it had snapped off at an angle, and it has all of that lovely texture that the standard horns do. From the front, you can see all those uneven areas of breakage, although I do wish there was just a little bit more paint in there to help all of that detail pop. Still, for a little bonus, it gets the job done. I found myself wondering how you would quote-unquote trade out the horns of the figure itself. I originally thought it would be like a one-piece horn with a magnet or something to connect the tip, but it's actually a really simple matter of popping off the horn in question and just popping the replacement in. I must say, once it's in there, it's really not super noticeable that there's a separation point there, which is something else I was worried about. And speaking on that, gotta give Nanmu props here. They really seem to have upped their seam control on this one. I can't really point out any super noticeable examples here, so if that's something you're concerned about, you have nothing to worry about on these figures. Well, one is resin, so I guess that's a given, but if you were worried about seams on the standard version, you don't have to. As far as the size of the figure goes, in a straight measurement on the standard version, you're looking at just under 11.5 inches long, or around 29 centimeters, and then he stands in at around 5 inches off the ground, or around 12.5 centimeters. However, if you measured along the curve of the spine, you're actually going to get something closer to 13 inches or right around 33 centimeters. Meanwhile, the Sick version comes in at around 12 inches or about 30 centimeters. I know it's off screen, okay? And just under 4 inches tall or about 10 centimeters when on the base. I would also like to note that both of these figures are quite hefty, so Nanmu really did deliver a quite literally solid product with both. Now, the Triceratops animatronic in the film was built to scale, so probably anywhere between 26 to 30 feet in length, which would put the Sick version in that 126 to 130 scale range, and the standard version in that 124 to 128 scale. Now, if anyone out there has the exact dimensions of the animatronic, I would love to hear them. But anyway, something I must comment on right away is that this seems too big for the humans Nanmu usually include with their figures. I mean, when you look at the trike in the film, it's not small, but it doesn't make the humans look tiny like we see going on here with Chris Pratt. Alan Grant is able to lean over and rest on the flank of the animal as it breathes, but here it looks like Chris would have to do some climbing if he wanted to achieve that. To illustrate my point, here it is with the 3 3/4 Ellie from the Mattel line, and even though she might be a little too big for this, she's a lot closer than the Nanmu human figures. Long story short, it feels like this model is a bit oversized, and we know that's something Nanmu usually does, but here it feels particularly egregious. Point made, let's move on and do some other comparisons, starting with some trikes. The first one I have to bring in is the Papo Triceratops. Like with most of Papo's figures, for years this was the best option you had if you wanted a Jurassic Park Triceratops model in your collection, without having to break the bank, of course. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it got the job done. This isn't to disparage Papo's work, as it's still a great option at a third of the cost of Heavy Lance here, but for those fans who are willing and able to spend the money, rejoice in knowing that Nanmu have delivered a near pitch-perfect Jurassic Park trike, both in a standing posture and in a resting pose straight out of the film, without needing hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars in order to get it. And next, let's bring in a Mattel trike since we're talking about movie versions of the animal. Here you can see Heavy Lance with the Soundstrike Triceratops, and these two are actually pretty similar in terms of the size. I think they suffer from opposite problems. The Soundstrike is too small for the toy range, and Lance is just a hair too big for Nanmu's line. Now let's get to the scientific offerings. First up, here it is with another trike that was released this year. It's Eophana's Triceratops, the dominant variant. I always love seeing movie counterparts compared to the actual animals. Now I believe Yoshi's trike is 1/35 scale for a roughly 27-foot specimen, so if that shows you just how big Lance is, then there you go. Regardless, I do love the look of these figures with one another. It always fascinates me to see how far we've come in our depictions of these animals, and how truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. I've also got the Beast of the Mesozoic subadult Triceratops, and I like this comparison because it's essentially a model versus a high-end action figure, and the disparate styles are cool to see with one another, if you ask me. And then we have PNSO's Triceratops Doyle, another cool and unique take from a scientific standpoint. Next, we have the Safari 2018 Triceratops, still one of the better modern interpretations in model form, and you can see that it is absolutely dwarfed by these Nanmu figures. Next up, we have the Batat trikes, both the standard and miniature, still some of the best trikes for their time and for all time, if you ask me, my humblest of opinions. And as a final comparison, here it is with the Fallen Queen from Rebor, and something that I actually think is pretty cool with these different Triceratops figures is that they can be used as stand-ins for your display. Since Rebor are yet to release King Trident, I think Heavy Lance makes a really nice placeholder when paired with the Fallen Queen and Hazelnut. Alternatively, if you can't find the Fallen Queen, the Jurassic Park aesthetics of the King Rex means it actually goes quite well with these two Triceratops figures from Nanmu, so do with that what you will. Alright, now let's get into some Nanmu comparisons. First up, I have to do a group shot with the other Jurassic Park icons. I know the Giraffe Titan is from W Dragon and it has snuck its way in here, but Nanmu is currently working on a JP Brachiosaurus, so until I get that figure, the W Dragon offering will have to do. Anyway, I am so excited to be able to have all of these guys together on the shelf, and like I said, Nanmu are working on both the Brachiosaurus and also a Parasaurolophus for their lineup, so soon we'll be able to have even more screen-accurate models from the original film in our collection. Of course, they all look great together. I'm particularly a fan of the Rex with the sick Triceratops, but any way you want to display them, you can't really go wrong. Now for some Sorna comparisons, since the Triceratops was also found on Site B. First up, we have the recently reviewed Ceratosaurus Scavenger, then we have the Stegosaurus Pike, and the Ankylosaurus Mace, both the standard one and the other reclining offering Nanmu have produced, the injured Ankylosaurus, to go along with their sick Triceratops. As a final Nanmu comparison, gotta bring in the other Ceratopsian they've done. It's the Sinoceratops Tower Shield. This was actually one of their earlier efforts, and if you ask me, it shows how far Nanmu have come in a couple of years alone. The Sinoceratops is a fine model, but not too complex when it comes to sculpt or paintwork. Lance shows a massive step forward when it comes to both, so if you haven't been paying attention to Nanmu yet, then now is certainly the time to start, because man, have they ever outdone themselves. And that was the Nanmu Triceratops duo Heavy Lance. I think these two are absolutely dynamite figures from the company. Easily my favorite herbivore they've produced, and in regards to the sick version, an absolute dream come true. If you're a fan of the original Jurassic Park, then that figure is 100% mandatory to your collection. I know it's a little more expensive given the material, but trust me on this. Save up the money and get this thing on your shelves. You will not regret it. It really goes to show just how committed Nanmu is to giving fans the most accurate recreations of their favorite movie monsters they can get without having to break the bank for it. I'm super glad Nanmu have come as far as they have, and am excited for everything the future holds for them. But as always, I want to know what you guys think of these two trikes. Do you own them yet? Are you planning to pick them up? Which version is your favorite? And what would you like to see from Nanmu down the line? Thank you again for tuning in to today's review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take care out there, and goodbye.